To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call Gary up.
Right now, just excuse me here for a moment.
Public comment.
Just say 2 in the morning. Oops. Can you hear me? Yeah.
You have to do full 75.
You did good. 75 since it's a local court. So try it again.
You shouldn't have to dial. You should just dial 9 and then the
Just
899 or 890 or the 821.
all right.
Didn't seem to want to connect.
Please leave your message for.
Hello, Gary. Are you there? Are you there, Gary? Gary, can you hear me?
Texas.
It's his message.
That's his voice.
He's not available. We'll be checking. That's the only number, 8210318 is what you had here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll give her a try a little later. Anyway, so we've gone through our, well, right before we open up the meeting this evening, I would like to allude to a few remarks. It's been brought to my attention, and I welcome everybody that's here in attendance, both online as those here in person, that public comment is designed for anybody that has or wants to address the commission with any issue that is related to the functions of this commission should be done under public comment. Previous meetings was brought to my attention that there's been information that we keep going over redundant. And so if there's any comment that needs to be done, you've seen the items on the agenda that under public comment that you want to address, you need to know now so the commission can formally pursue and conduct its business under a structured manner. Now, having said that, well, I'll comment a little further. So is there anybody that wants to talk in regards to the items in the agenda? Now is the time to do it. Now, just to clarify one point, employees and employees only will be allowed to ask questions after we get to a certain item. So if you need to address the commission, it needs to be done now. Okay, so we move on to item number 3, item A, introduction of police officers. Amy?
Thank you, Mayor. I would invite Chief Hayes to introduce our 2 members of the Development Department.
Hello, this is my first time speaking with y'all. Before I start the introductions, I would like to say that it's an honor to be able to represent the city in the capacity of police chief, and I think we're really moving forward at this point. So, with that being said, we were in the middle of the process when I got promoted, so I got to finish out bringing these 2 people to our family. So this is Kaylee Luther, and this is Tanner Fiesel, and you'll be seeing them a lot. They will be going to the police academy on November 9th. So they're set up to go, both of them, on the 9th. So it's going to be it was a long process to get them here, and then it'll be another long process to continue their education. And then they'll go through FTO, which is another long process, but it'll be worth it. I'm really happy to have them, and you know, it's been, what, a week now. And,
your recording has reached the maximum.
Well, he got that much of it. But it'll be a pleasure to watch them grow and watch them serve this community alongside of us. So I wanted to publicly welcome them.
Well, Officer Luther and Fiesel, we welcome you to the force. Thank you for stepping up. I know that this is a challenging job, but if Frankie has taken place to hire you, I think he's got confidence. I think you'll be a great addition to the city of Goodwood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give him a applause. Okay, moving on to item B. We're going to address a health insurance presentation. That's basically what it is, a presentation. Mr. Longcoffer will take the place. I would also remind the employees that right after he makes his presentation, he will welcome any questions in regards to the presentation that he's going to make. So, Robert, without any further introduction, would you please take the microphone and introduce yourself?
I will. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Bob Langhofer. I'm with USI Insurance Services. On the line with me tonight is Sally Tatro with USI. She'll be joining us on screen here momentarily. I believe we have a WebEx that's been brought up. There she is. Hi, Sally.
Hi there, how are you all?
Good.
Thank you.
So I want to start just by giving a little background on how it is that I came to the city of Goodwin to address the commission tonight. By the way, thank you very much for having me. That journey actually started back in 1994 when I started working with Cali County Community College, now it's called Cali College, in managing the risk under their employee benefit program. And in the process of that, I had the opportunity to deal with Ben Shears as an employee benefit committee member at the time. And when Ben made the transition to president of Northwest Tech, he called me and said, we need some help. Can you help us on our employee benefit program? And that has really led, believe it or not, 26 years ago now, it's hard to believe, 26 years ago, that really has led us to having a discussion this evening. I want to give you just a couple of overviews. Sometimes when we think about employee benefit programs or health insurance in general, we get the impression that those that help design our plans are really there to help shop for insurance. And that is true. What USI does for its clients is help shop for insurance, but you really can't limit it to that, because what we ultimately do is we help manage the risks under your employee benefit program. And in this room, there are a lot of different stakeholders in the program, and there are a lot of individuals and entities within the city that have an interest in the benefit program and have risk associated with the plans. So for example, the plan participants or the city employees, their spouses, and the dependents that are covered in the plan, the risk that they have is in terms of what their deductible is, what their co-insurance is, and if anything comes out of their paycheck for the cost of insurance, those are the risks that they have along, with the plan. In addition to that, having a good understanding of how their insurance operates. And the period of time that we're in, not only in the state of Kansas, in the city of Goodland, but across the country, where we have additional stress associated with health care and the quality of our benefit programs, it's absolutely imperative that everyone has a good understanding of how their plan works so that when they require medical care, they can achieve the appropriate medical care for their family and understand ultimately what their out-of-pocket is going to be. For the individuals on staff with the city that manage the programs, your human resources department, they have risks associated with the jobs that they do. They have to make sure that what's being communicated is compliant. They have to make sure that the individuals that they are looking to hire as employees for the city, and ultimately, even when that individual terminates their relationship with the city, there are risks all along the way. What kind of notices they are given. Not only when they start, but also if ultimately they end up going on COBRA. And ultimately, as employees, they understand that there's a balance between the cost and the benefits under the plan, and your human resources team is right in the middle of that. And on the finance side, in the city side, you as commissioners have to be able to balance the cost of the program and ultimately be accountable to the individuals that pay the program, and that's the taxpayer. So throughout that process, oftentimes, there is going to be difficulty in managing the risks of the different stakeholders, but that's ultimately what we do. And in the process of that, we also shop for insurance, and we negotiate with the insurance carriers, and we make sure that the contracts are structured appropriately for all of the risk holders under the plan. I want to give you just a quick quote by Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln said that you cannot elevate the wage earner by pulling the wage payer down. And I mention that only because as a result of COVID, we have seen with all of the entities that we work with, difficulty from a revenue perspective. When tax revenue goes down or property values go down, it has an impact on the local economy. When businesses don't have employees coming to work because they're quarantined, or simply the business doesn't have enough business to drive forward through the downturn in the economy, it affects everybody. And so being able to manage all that at a time when we see health insurance continuing to go up significantly, it becomes a fairly big challenge. So that kind of gives you an idea as to what we do. I'd like, if you would, to pull up the capability presentation or the summary, and in your packets, commissioners, you're going to find that on the left-hand side of your folder. And I want to give you just a brief snapshot as to who USI is. I've defined what we do, but now I want to tell you a little bit about who we are, and then ultimately we'll look at how we do it. So if you look at slide number 3 or page number 3 in your presentation, you're going to see that USI is an organization. We have roughly 200 offices across the country. We have 8,000 employees across the country. And we evaluate and we manage risk in 5 major areas. On the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see commercial insurance, which is property, casualty, and liability insurance, employee benefits, personal risk, and then individual programs, and then finally retirement consulting. When you look at page number 4, or slide 4, gives you a little bit of insight into who we are from a cultural perspective. And I want to draw your attention over to the right-hand side of the page. You're going to see a snippet from Forbes in 2019, now in 2020. In 2018 as well, USI was recognized as one of America's best large employers, and that's evaluated not only from our clients, but also from an employee perspective. So when we talk about clients being in the governmental business like you are, and as a governmental entity, there are certain things that are characteristic and unique about you that are different than maybe what we would see in the private sector. And just by quick way of assimilation, I mentioned to you that we work with Northwest Tech. We also work with Topeka School District. I've worked with the City of Manhattan for many, many years. In 2016, we started working with the City of McPherson, and we can go on and on about the public entities that we work with out of our office in Wichita. On page number 5, it really starts to get into a lot of it gets into a description as to how we actually go about managing the risk, and we're going to give you a little bit more of a snapshot here in just a second. But on in the middle of the screen, you're going to see something that is referred to as Omni, and you'll see proprietary analytics in that circular graph. The Omni in and of itself really becomes the heartbeat of what we do and how we do it. The Omni system is a system that all of our benefit consultants like Sally and I use nationally, from California to New York. And that system now allows us to take characteristics of an employer, 60 employees, for example, that would be covered under your medical plan, the average age of those individuals and how much is being spent on the cost of your insurance, and say, which risk management solutions will help us manage where we are today. And it will tell us what the financial impact is to the organization. It also tells us what the impact is going to be to your employees. Is the solution that we're going to be recommending, is that disruptive to your staff? And you're going to see an example of that in just a moment. That second part of the graph talks about network, and that is essentially the employees that are within their particular specialties within USI. And then the final one is the enterprise, and that's how we actually engage, the methodology that we use. Page number 6 gives you a snapshot of the Omni engine. Page number 7 looks at the network, and I want to dive into the network here just for a moment. So on the network, you're going to see we have different individuals and different parts of our organization that are really focused in on the specific elements of risk that you have in managing your program. On the left-hand side, you're going to see Sally Tatro and I, and we would serve as the consultants ultimately for the city. And I might mention to you that the reason we were asked to be here to begin with is discussions around your current employee benefit program and the services that you are being provided by your current insurance agent. And I use insurance agent differently than I use insurance consultant or risk consultant like USI. And the way I want to differentiate that, it is one thing to get quotes for insurance and tell you how much it's going to be for your insurance program and maybe even look at the different deductible options. But that really doesn't help us manage risk in the long run. That's important, but we want to do things that ultimately will help provide more stability for your insurance program, more stability for your employees, more stability for your HR department, and more stability for the city. The second part of that, or the next section is our account executives, and you can look at that at your convenience, but I do want to focus in on two areas specifically. One is you're going to see underwriters and analytics, and then a few sections down, you're going to see pharmacy consultants. So from an underwriter and analytics standpoint, evaluating the actual medical risks and then negotiating with the insurance carriers that are being used to service your plan, like Blue Cross Blue Shield, understanding their methodologies and being able to get them to a point where we're capturing every dollar to help manage the program really becomes important. An interesting segment of that really ties into the pharmacy consultancy side. I don't think there is any of us in this room that doesn't understand that the cost of pharmaceutical drugs has gone up significantly since the passage of the Affordable Care Act. And there are several reasons why that's actually occurred. One of the most significant reasons is that the insurance companies are paid significant rebates back from the drug manufacturers. And whether you like who the current president is, the administration has talked about that issue. And I can tell you, when we look clear back to 2010 to 2020, rebates in the United States have increased by over 800% during that time frame. So what's a rebate? I want you to think of it just like you would buy a box of cereal, or if you go to a store that sells tires and there is a coupon that you can send in and get money back because you purchased that item. That's exactly what happens on the prescription drug side, and I can tell you that prescription drug costs, about 30% of those costs now, are actually being returned from the manufacturers in the form of rebates. So what's that have to do with your plan? The fact of the matter is there are ways to drive rebates back to the plan, and you probably are getting some of those today, but the question is, are we maximizing those and making sure that we are capturing all of those rebates? The second component on the prescription drug side, and this, if you are on a specialty drug, you probably know about this, but I'm going to use Humira. Humira is often advertised on TV. It's the #1 specialty drug in the U.S. It's for rheumatoid arthritis, also can be used sometimes for psoriasis. We have hundreds of clients that have employees that take Humira. The average cost on Humira is about $5,000 per month, $60,000 a year, and we have seen many that are up around the $100,000 range. The rebates that are coming back from the manufacturer are around $1,200 to $1,500 per month on that prescription. And not only that, Humira, as a manufacturer, will provide copay assistance to the member. And Humira will provide about up to $15,000 of copay assistance each year. And so if you think about it from this perspective, if the cost of Humira is $5,000, and if the manufacturer would actually help a plan participant pay up to $1,500 of copayment, if we don't have a copayment that's designed to capture that manufacturer copay assistance, we pay a whole lot more for our prescriptions than what we need to. That's a simple risk management strategy. When I say simple, it's not that simple, but it is a very easily implemented risk management strategy that has no impact to the member because the manufacturer pays the copay for the member, and by the same token, it drives down for the city's plan their cost for Humira by about $1,500 a month. So it's that sort of balance when we talk about balancing the risk between the plan participants and balancing the cost for the city and making it easy to explain through your HR department. That's just a simple example of a strategy that we would use to do all that and bring it all together. I threw a lot in there. I'm going to stop just for a second. Do you have any questions about that before we go on? Okay. Slide number 8 simply illustrates at the middle of all of the risk management strategies are our clients, are the stakeholders, employees, the city, your HR team, so on and so forth. And then page number 9 looks at the specific competencies within USI that we would deploy. I want to go another direction just briefly, because managing risk also has to involve a discussion about grandfather status. Now, there's a lot of confusion about what grandfather status actually means, but in 2010, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, the exact medical plan that you had in place at that time and what the employees were paying, if any, for the cost of your insurance was by law determined to be a grandfathered plan. And in your packet on the right-hand side, right in the middle of the page, you're going to see what is grandfathered status and how is grandfathered status, or how is status lost. And that will be another, there you go. So I want to focus specifically in how is the status lost. The first thing you'll notice is we would lose grandfather status if we would eliminate all or substantially all benefits to diagnose or treat a particular condition. So for example, if the city decided that we're not going to cover open heart procedures anymore, that would cause the city's plan to become non-grandfathered. The second thing is, you'll notice it says increase the percentage cost sharing requirements. Example, an individual's co-insurance. So under your plan today, I believe once the deductible has been met, the plan pays 80%, the employees pay 20%. If we increase the 20 to 30, we by definition would lose grandfather status. The third thing you'll see is it says increased fixed amount cost sharing other than co-payments like deductible by more than medical inflation plus 15%. So the $500 deductible that's in place today, if we would increase that above 15% plus medical inflation, we would lose grandfather status. Increase any co-pay by greater than medical inflation plus 15%, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot in there. But I want to go back to that copay assistance that we talked about on Humira. If we would change your plan so that we could get the copay assistance back from the manufacturer, we would lose grandfather status. And I can tell you that oftentimes there is fear about losing grandfather status under the plans, and we're fearful because we've heard a lot of things that simply are not true. We might be losing grandfather status because we've increased deductible, but simply losing grandfather status doesn't mean the deductible is going to go up. We may choose to lose grandfather status because there are some risk management strategies that we want to try to utilize to help keep costs stable under the plan. So losing grandfather status, let me talk about the impact of that. If we lose grandfather status, I guess let me finish this off real quick. Decrease the employer's contribution towards any cost of, or the cost towards any tier of coverage by more than 5%. So right now, the city pays 100% of the cost of coverage. If we moved that to where the city was paying 94 and the employees were paying 6% of the total cost of coverage, the plan would lose grandfather status. So anything above 5%, clear back to since 2010, would cause us to lose grandfather status. And then any addition or increase in the annual dollar limits on benefits, there are some limitations around that. So here's kind of what I want you to think about. If we would choose to try to take advantage of what the market's presenting to us, prescription drug companies have increased costs.
It's not up.
Josh, the live feed, they say it isn't up.
It shows that it's uploading.
Okay.
It's on YouTube's end
Sorry to
or
interrupt.
something.
Okay, my apologies.
It'll be uploaded as soon as this is over.
Okay. So if we, for example, would want to try to take advantage of what the manufacturers are putting out there in terms of copay assistance, and we would increase the copay on specialty drugs, knowing that the manufacturer would step in and pay it, we would lose grandfather status. But that would be a risk management strategy that we would utilize to absolutely help keep costs more affordable or sustainable in the long run of the plan. On the positive side of losing grandfather status, if we would move to lose grandfather status into the plan, all preventive care would be paid for by the plan at 100%. And it would be age-appropriate preventive care. Flu shots, for example, covered at 100%. Mammograms, covered at 100%. Colorectal screens or colonoscopies for individuals age 50, covered at 100%. So there are some additional things that the plan would cover, and that's where sometimes we have to evaluate, is losing grandfather status really worth what we can gain on the other side of it? Too many times I've seen it reduced to, if we raise our deductibles by this, we lose grandfather status, and here's what's going to happen. We miss the boat when we do that. We have to look at the other things that we can do to help keep the plan sustainable in the long run. Does that make sense? So the loss of grandfather status isn't just about losing deductible and co-insurance. There may be some other things that we want to be able to gain through that process. So I want to talk now, and I'll close with some specific examples on how we actually go about our risk management strategies. And you're going to see a document that says City of Goodland Omni, and you're going to see it says 1 Minute Underwriter at the top. And the reason why it's 1 Minute Underwriter, it is just a snapshot, very quickly, to look at a few strategies that may or may not make sense. So on the first page, you're going to see that roughly there were 58 employees on the plan when we prepared this document. The annual cost per employee, and this is a composite cost, whether you have single coverage or family coverage, is about $14,633 a year. If you scroll down just a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, you're going to see that the estimated annual cost for the city for those 58 employees is sitting at about $850,000, $848,000. Now, ordinarily what we would find is if you look up above that, you'll find that physician services typically would comprise about 16% of our total spend. Inpatient hospital charges around 20% or $169,000. Outpatient facility charges or hospital charges at $203,000. And pharmacy claims would be about 20% or $169,000 for total claims of $678,000, with what the insurance company would charge us to administer the plan sitting at $169,743. On the back of the page, you're going to find specific risk management solutions, and I will tell you that this is not a comprehensive list of solutions, but they are solutions that I have brought forward specifically simply to illustrate to you. And I want to focus in on one example, because you have seen this example before, and if you look down 4 items from the top under underwriting and analytics, you're going to see plan design and contribution modeling, $25,461. You're going to see savings of 3%, and you're going to see where it says disruption at medium. So whenever we sit down and we evaluate whether it makes sense to change contributions or to change deductibles or to change an employee's out-of-pocket, we look at a variety of things. Number one, let's start on the right-hand side on disruption. We're going to look at that and we're going to say, how disruptive is that change to your staff? What does that really mean to them from an out-of-pocket perspective? Are there ways that we can limit that out-of-pocket for the employee while we're making the change? The second thing to your left, you're going to see a percentage, and then the third item that you see going back to the left is savings of $25,461. So what this illustrates to you is when we sit down and we engage in discussions about what the right path is moving forward on average for all of our consultants across the country, and we can give you case study or after case study, the average change that we're seeing is around 3% of total cost, or around $25,461. We also ask the question, what is the right deductible and what is the right amount for individuals to contribute to the cost of insurance based on what's going on in the local economy? And if you look in the middle of HR services, or the second item down, you're going to see where it says benchmarking of benefit plans. So when we benchmark benefit plans, what that actually means is we're going to look at the plans that other employers have from a size perspective. We're going to look at it from a regional perspective, and we're going to look at it from a type of business perspective. So the governmental segment is what we would pull into it. And we would say, how does the city of Goodland's plans compare with what other employers are doing? And that becomes important for a variety of reasons. Number one, if you end up, and I will tell you there's a large public entity that we work with, they happen to be with Blue Cross. For October 1st of this year, Blue Cross brought them out a 36% rate increase, and their premium was at $14 million before the renewal. To take a 36% rate increase where the premium was going up over $18 million, and this particular public entity said, we don't have any more dollars. We can't afford to contribute anymore. The good side of that story is we wound up renegotiating the contract. They wound up with a 5% increase with no change in benefits. Is that something I can promise? Absolutely not, because there was a lot of arm twisting that was involved. But they also looked at it from the perspective that if we end up having to push a lot of costs onto employees, and they have a lot of single mothers that were insured under the plans, they said, it's going to be devastating to them. Their deductibles were already at $1,500 on the single side and $3,000 on the family side. And so by having a perspective, what's going on in the local market, how do we slay this health insurance dragon, if you will, and how do we have parity with what other employers are doing from a regional perspective? When you know that, then you can make decisions about your programs. So each one of these elements that you see here are things that we get involved with in considering what's the right strategy. We're going to tell you who the right vendor is. Is it Blue Cross? Is it somebody else? We're going to tell you that. But then once you have that, then what do? Because if you do nothing else, you're going to continue to do the same thing that you've always done. And with the cost of health insurance going up as significantly as it is, it's unsustainable for any organization in the long run. You got to get in, you got to delve into each one of these risk management strategies in order to have a path where the employees, your HR department, your finance team, and the city itself can really succeed long term. So at the end of the day, what ultimately we would ask of you is, if the strategy that USI brings to help manage risk, if that strategy is right for the city, ultimately you'll have to do something different than what you're doing today with your current agent. You have a renewal with Blue Cross that will probably be done by the end of October, maybe the first part of November. And then what do? Do you go out to bid again, come back with the same deductible or co-insurance strategies? Or do you say, there may be some alternative things that we can do to help drive costs down and make it more sustainable long term? Does that make sense? What questions do you have for me? And I would say, anyone here, if you have questions, we're more than happy to answer them. I will tell you what was very successful at the college, and Ben experienced this. We sat down with the benefit committee, we sat down with administration, we sat down with the HR department. We said, here's what it is that we're faced with. How can we collectively, and quite frankly, there were some really, really good ideas that came out of the employees that were there, that were participating in the committee. And they said, what if we did this? What if we did that? And it really worked well. And I would say that Cali College probably has the lowest rates in the state of Kansas at this point. I don't care what industry or whether it's a governmental entity that you look at, their rates are exceptionally low overall. Questions?
Any questions, guys?
I don't have any questions, a lot of food for thought.
There is.
I appreciate you coming and presenting to us.
You bet.
JD?
No, thanks for the information. No.
So I've got just, you say that the numbers will be in by at least the end of October, possibly.
That's what I would guess.
So at that particular time, in order to be able to get what I define as accurate numbers, would you have to have a current health status on each of the employees?
No, we would not.
You do not.
So here's what I would suggest that we do if ultimately the city made the decision to work with USI. And by the way, that level of detail that I just gave to you, you won't get that at every meeting, I promise. We do the analysis, we bring back recommendations. So we would essentially go to Blue Cross, John, if USI was appointed as your consultant. And we would get data from Blue Cross that would tell us what your medical claims have been, what your prescription drug claims have been. And the data that we get is de-identified. There are no names on that data at all. We're not interested in who has what condition. We're interested in what those conditions are and whether they have been resolved or not moving forward. And I will also tell you, under federal law, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act has requirements around protected health information. And there are certain things that we cannot have access to. So when we get the data from Blue Cross, it will tell us our medical claims, our prescription drug claims. It will tell us the type of prescription drug claims that have actually been prescribed. Tell us what percentage were generic, what percentage were name brand drugs. We will be able to get from Blue Cross whether you have received any rebates back from Blue Cross, back from the pharmaceutical manufacturers. And we'll be able to also get information from them that tells us what type of outstanding medical conditions we have under the plan. From there, we'll have a fairly good idea as to whether the plan can be marketed to other entities. We have more clients with Blue Cross than any other insurance company in the state of Kansas, and so we don't necessarily advocate change for the sake of change. But what we want to do is, if it is marketable, there is nothing wrong than having good competition with good facts to let them make a decision on how much risk they want to take and how much they're going to ask us to take. One of the things that's unique about Blue Cross is they tell us exactly how they will calculate your renewal. And they will take 32% of your most recent period, they'll take 42% of last year, and they'll take 26% of the past prior year, and they'll bring that together. And I have seen time and time again, in fact, you could ask the city of McPherson what happened to them a few years ago. They came off a really good year last year. And so 42% of their projection from Blue Cross for the following year was based on a really good year. But they knew that they had an individual that was going to hit the plan for about $1 million that following year. And they got themselves in a position where they under budgeted because of the way Blue Cross calculated the renewal. By the same token, if you've had a large claim that has resolved itself, or the individual is no longer on the plan, and that's baked into the calculation, you may put yourself in a position where you overfund it, or you make changes that really you did not need to make because those scenarios have resolved themselves. So that's a long way of explaining, do we need individual information? Not necessarily. We can get the level of data that we need from Blue Cross on a de-identified basis and still be able to get to what we need to review from a risk profile standpoint.
So in the event that Blue Cross would not be competitive, then you reach out to the other three major entities in the state?
Right, exactly. So when the mayor talks about three other entities, we refer to the four major entities as Blue Cross, United Healthcare, Cigna, and Aetna. And those are the major four. But those aren't the only ones that we would necessarily want to access. We may want to access some other independent third-party administrators. We may want to access a standalone version of Aetna or United Health Group. And a standalone version, they have an organization, this gets way into the weeds, but it's called a third-party administrator, that uses the Aetna network or uses the United Healthcare network, so that we still get the big discounts from the doctors and hospitals, but we have a little bit more flexibility from a plan design perspective. So all of those, Mayor, we think should be on the table as we begin that evaluation process.
So just for the sake of the mechanical understanding of how you do this process for the commissioners as well as myself, there is a possibility, we care for our employees, and this body will eventually make a decision. We will be reuniting, of course, in November. I think that's when we decided that we would look at the insurance plan again. But from the mechanical standpoint, if I hear you right, that there is a possibility that after you collectively gather all of the information and look at it, that there might be, that the insurance that our employees get might be possibly affected very little, if at all?
Correct. Correct. And so when we talk about deductible and co-insurance and co-payments, for example, if Blue Cross, just hypothetically, if Blue Cross would come in with a 10% increase and the premium would go from $850,000, you tack another $85,000 onto that, that puts us at $930, is that right? $935, yeah, roughly. If we know that, for example, there are 3 specialty meds that are currently being taken, and we can get copay assistance at $12,000 per prescription, $36,000, now we have almost cut that rate increase in half and have not said anything about contributions or have said anything about changes in deductibles or co-insurance. Is that sustainable in the long run? I don't know that it is, because at the end of the day, health insurance costs going up, ticking up about 7.5% this year. I saw Blue Cross Blue Shield numbers for 2021. They're projecting the prescription drug cost alone to be at 10.2%. That's just on the prescription side. So, to answer your question, we want to look at every possible scenario to maintain the quality and integrity of the program before we, that's the low-hanging fruit. Increasing what employees pay or increasing their deductibles, that's the easy stuff. That's the low-hanging fruit. We want to drive in, and let's get to some of the other stuff first and leave that second in the evaluation.
So in doing so, as I mentioned, we, I've had a long time to think about it, and I'm conscientious, and I try to do, and I appreciate the employees as well as has been said here, but in doing so, would you set up some type of a committee where the employees themselves, along with city staff, would be involved at reaching all of these numbers?
Absolutely. In fact, we would encourage that. I can tell you that for USD 259, which is the school district in Wichita, they have close to 16,000 employees on the plan. We sit down with the union and we bring all of the data and we say, this is what it looks like, and it becomes a process where there's transparency through all of it. And if we got this pool of money allocated for benefits, and this is what we're looking at, which things become most palatable for the employees? And oftentimes even providing a multiple option benefit program. You've got one option today. If you provide a multiple option benefit program, and that was one of the strategies we used at the City of McPherson, is we said, look, there are some people that are young, are single, and they hardly ever go to the doctor. They would probably be better suited in a high deductible health plan where they can put dollars away to pay for things that aren't covered by insurance. On the other hand, you've got some individuals that are fairly sick and require some fairly significant medical prescription drugs. High deductible health plan may not be an option for them. But even having flexibility in what works best for your family becomes really beneficial.
All right, so that's all the questions. Anybody, how about anybody else, guys?
So,
Yes, sir.
in all your plans that you've looked at,
Right,
how many of them, like the big thing where we're here,
right.
we don't go to Kansas City to doctor.
I got it.
We go to Colorado.
Absolutely.
How many of those are per se out of network?
Great question. So I will tell you, first of all, our office in Wichita, we actually report to our division in Denver. So not only do we have individuals in Kansas, but we also have boots on the ground approach in Denver. So let me answer your question directly. When we do our analysis, one of the things that we're going to do is what's called a disruption report. And a disruption report is going to say, and we'll get this report from Blue Cross, who are all of the doctors and hospitals that your employees have used over the past year. And we're going to ask Aetna, we're going to ask United Healthcare to take that report and come back to us and say, how many of the doctors and hospitals that were utilized are part of your preferred network? Does that make sense? And then once we have that data, then we can sit down with the employees on the committee. We can sit down with HR, we can sit down with whoever the city designates and have that discussion. Kind of interesting, we do the consulting for the Kansas Turnpike, and I've personally worked with the Turnpike for a long time. Several years ago, we made the move to Aetna from Blue Cross. They were with Blue Cross for 50 years. They were with Aetna 2 years and have since gone back to Blue Cross. But the point that I want to illustrate is Aetna actually had an arrangement in Wichita where Wesley Hospital, and that's one of the big hospitals in Wichita, gave a better discount than what we could get from Via Christi. And that better discount actually reduced the cost for those that chose that plan by about 10%. And so what we did is we said, we're going to offer two different plans. You can choose which one you want. If you want to go with a more limited option using this hospital, you'll get lower deductible or co-insurance, or the cost of your insurance will actually be lower. If you want more flexibility, fine, you can choose this one. And so being able to have that dialogue where employees actually say, what works best for me and my family, I can tell you right now, if it, just a personal story, I have a granddaughter that has a pretty serious eye condition. And it's a genetic condition where if it's not maintained, there's a chance that she would lose her eyesight by the time she's 18. I can tell you right now, I don't care where she goes, she's going to go to a place that can stop that from happening. And that's important to me. And it's important when people on your plan get into those situations where they want to be able to make sure that they do what they can do to save themselves, provide a better lifestyle, or protect one of their loved ones.
Well, that's what we like about right now is anywhere we go, they pretty much take the plan that we have.
So there are some exceptions to that. And we've got a client in which I'm dealing with some claim problems right now where individual taking his wife to Dallas for the weekend, she has a heart attack. The ambulance comes and picks her up, and the ambulance is not preferred, not only Blue Cross, but anybody. Takes her to the hospital, and now the guy's looking at a $2,000 ambulance bill. And he said, all I did was dial 911, and they showed up. I was sitting there doing CPR. I didn't look and ask, what ambulance service are you with? And oh, by the way, let me check my phone to see if you're preferred in Blue Cross's network. That's not reasonable at all. But you still, even if you're with Blue Cross, you still can have those weird things that happen. And that's where, not when we tell you we help manage risk, guess what? We're going to help manage that risk as well. We've got what's known as a USI Benefit Resource Center. We have employees that are available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Central Time. Doesn't matter if you're with Blue Cross or Aetna or whoever. They have information on your benefit plans. You can call them after Blue Cross is closed at 4 o'clock or 4:30 Central Time, not Mountain Time, and have somebody there on the other end to help with those issues. But when we say we help manage risk, that's what we do because we know it's important.
Any other question, guys? Well, Robert, thank you so much for helping us
You have one?
I just didn't really specifically say what kind of a commitment does the city have to go into with you in order to obtain your quotes?
Great question. So our contract's pretty simple. We want you to value what we do, and if you want to cancel it, you can cancel it, at any time with 30-day notice. Now, what we do ask is let us do it the first year. So give us a commitment for 1 year. Let us work through the process. But after that, and the reason why is this: there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes on, and there are hours and hours that our team will spend on that. But other than the first year, if you want to cancel any time, tell us. We'd like the opportunity to make it right. If you're not happy, but you just cancel it. You say, we're done. We don't want you to not see value in what we do, and we're going to work hard to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's it.
Okay.
Robert, thank you so much for your presentation. We will be in touch with you. If you have any questions, you can contact Andrew. You've got his phone number.
Okay.
You guys can communicate, dialogue, whatever. And then the commission will continue to discuss the presentation.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
your time.
Thank you. You bet. All right, I'm going to try Mr. Ferris one more time here. Let's try the 91821 to Sawyer Beaver.
9821, yeah, that is good.
No.
Did you know one of them?
Oh, so you
Should
don't-
just be 9 and then 821,
All right.
and then whatever this number is that we have that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please leave your message for
Okay, guys, so we go on to item number 4, consent agendas. Item A, September 21st, 20 Commission meeting minutes. Item B, appropriation ordinance 2020-19, 2020-19A, and 2020-P19. I will entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
I'll move.
A motion by Commissioner Thompson, do I have a second? A second, Commissioner Brombach. Any questions or concerns? Mary, you go.
Howard,
Yes.
Ferris, Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Okay, move on to item number 5, formal actions. Item A, transfer of property at 1008 Main Avenue. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This item was discussed at our September 21st Commission meeting. No action was taken at that meeting. It was recommended at the time that we bring Ben in to discuss the plan for the property that was previously discussed. Perhaps allow Ben to talk about the evolution of kind of where the plan has gone, and then where it's at now in a little bit of details, a little bit more detail than was provided at the last meeting. So I would defer to Mr. Shears. You guys come to the podium.
So appreciate the chance to come and visit a little bit about this. I had asked Andrew if he would show a few pictures of the building so we all kind of had a good sense of which one it was. I've had some other conversations, well, which one is this? Well, it's this one. It's this one right here. So kind of backing up just a little bit as far as kind of the as Andrew said, the evolution of this project. One of the things that I wanted to do since arriving in Goodland is to figure out a way in which the college could have a presence outside of the east part of town. Obviously, what we do and where we are is pretty focal within that area of town, but we wanted to figure out a way in which we could drive a presence elsewhere in the community. And to be able to do something that we thought would be impactful not only for the college, but for the community as well. So we watch and we keep our eyes out on buildings downtown as far as the possibility of bringing programs downtown or services, those kinds of things. And of course, this building is one that many already have some background and some story. It's got a little history with it. And one little factoid that I think is kind of fun, in case you didn't know this about this particular building, it was actually the first hospital in town. Was a pharmacy down in the lower level, and then a new doctor came to town and opened up his clinic upstairs with some overnight extended stay in case they needed a little bit of extra time for healing. So neat building. It's got a lot of history behind it. But we looked at this as an opportunity, and I contacted Andrew amidst kind of when some of the goings-on were happening with the roof situation and all that kind of good stuff. And looked to see if that was a possibility for us at some point in time down the road. And we kind of let it sit on ice for a while, and then he said, let's talk about this thing. Is there something we can do? We got this building down here, and I know some of the earlier conversations, that Andrew had shared was that there was some discussion about what do you do with an old building that was in the condition that it's in, with a big hole in the roof and mold all throughout it and holes clear through to the basement. You can see a little bit inside shops right there. The basement's on the right, main floor is on the left. To give you some sense kind of, and this is, by the way, this is about a week ago. So this is current state of affairs within the building. And so you may look at me and say, why in the world would you want to get entangled in something that looks like that? One, because I love old buildings. Here's a couple more shots, thank you. On the left, this is upstairs. On the right, it's upstairs. And so the water damage over the years has leaked, of course, through the roof, which has been repaired by the city, which I think was a good decision, personally, because it saved the downtown building. And one of the reasons I think that's the case is as there's debate about whether or not you tear down the historic downtown building or not, to me personally, this is just my belief, that it's never a good sign when you have a community that's tearing down the downtown buildings. And so we looked at that and we said, okay, what possibilities exist for us to be able to partner with the city, build stronger relationships than we've had in the past. And I'll pause for just a moment to give a shout out to Andrew. I will say, quite publicly on the record, I've had a very good working relationship with Andrew, and I think this is probably, I can safely say this is some of the better relationships that we've had, some of the best relationships we've had with the city in decades. And so certainly appreciate his work and working with us and building those bridges. But we looked at that and we said, okay, what can we do? Well, as you know, we have a carpentry program and we have an electrical program. And those are two pretty significant contributions into this project that we could bring to the table. So we looked at this and we said, okay, well, this would be a project. It would take, obviously, multiple years. This is not an overnight project, as you can see from the condition of the building. We have, and this kind of fits into the narrative of kind of what we're looking at, we kind of jokingly have dubbed it the foundation, because that's about the only thing outside of the roof worth salvaging in the structure. But this particular building, we've talked a lot. I've had some conversations with Mr. Bierman about ways in which we could continue, again, to build relationships and bring entities together for the benefit of the community. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And it's honestly growing more critical and more important as time goes on for agencies to work together. It's got to happen. And so in our case, this was a great opportunity for us to connect with the city on the possibility of doing some restoration and renovation of this building and putting it back to a purpose that serves the community. This building, I can't tell you, I haven't been able to quite get a number yet on the number of years that it's sat vacant, and our concern, because the reality is the success of the city is also the success of the college. If the community isn't growing, thriving, and doing well, that's going to impact the college as well, and vice versa. And so I think there's a good connection there. So what we've talked about doing was trying to figure out a way in which we could work with the high school, put something into that facility that would benefit them, that would benefit us, and would benefit the community. So we began those discussions. We started talking and kicking around quite a few ideas. So if you go, Andrew, back to that one slide back, whoever's running the slideshow. There we are. Go back one slide. And so on that left-hand side there where you can see the heap rubble. On the very back side of that is the stairway going down into the basement, shown on the right. But what we've talked about doing, I'll kind of talk a little bit about structure first, and then I'll talk about purpose here in just a moment. But from a structural standpoint, what we would like to see, you can see the plaster on the right-hand side of the walls, and behind that is brick. What we'd like to do is the possibility of taking the plaster off the walls, of course cleaning out all the goodies that are laying around all over the floor in addition to that, but exposing the brick again, having exposed brick walls. On the flooring itself, what we've talked about is kind of kicked around the idea of putting down wide plank wood floor across there, opening up the rafters and dropping in things like Edison lights so that you have an event space, an area there that is, it's classy, something nice, something that we can be able to be proud of. We've talked about a couple different opportunities that we've looked at. We've looked at partnering with the high school with their entrepreneurship program that they have, and as you know, they do their entrepreneurship challenges each year. There's some really good ideas that come out of that. We've looked at talking about how we can partner with them so that there are some occupational work experience or OWE experiences that the students can do with some kind of a storefront downtown. That's been something we've kicked around. The school districts, that's an increasing amount of, I wouldn't say pressure, but there's an increasing initiative on the state level from the Kansas Department of Education to be able to put occupational work experience opportunities in the high school. And so it seemed like a really good partnership that we would be able to accommodate that in there as well. We've also talked about within the confines of that space being able to add in the kitchen area in there and turning that into kind of a nice event space in there for the community members to rent out, as well as have our foundation office down there so that we have a presence. So it kind of, our foundation, which is the Northwest Tech Endowment Association, housed in there as well. So we kind of thought that fit really nicely with the concept of the foundation. At the same time, the office suites that are upstairs, of course it's got a pretty good size area up there as well. Taking a similar approach to what was done in downtown Norton, which I think was a really, really good project if you had a chance to see it. It's really worth going and taking a look. But the Dangy Hansen Foundation stepped in and helped, as well as EICI and their community foundation, and created space up there for their nonprofit to house, as well as a conference room area. So there are a couple different opportunities on the table that we can look at that we think fit really well with, again, being able to provide a space here in the community that ensures that that building doesn't fall into any further disrepair than it already has. Also ensures that we don't have an out-of-town buyer who picks it up as a tax rebate or a tax break, and then it sits for another 20 years untouched and in this condition. So that kind of gives a little bit of background on kind of what we're looking at and some possibilities that we're kicking around down the road. I think from our perspective, this is not a project that is not an easy one, for sure. I would anticipate that we're probably upwards of about 3 to 5 years to get this done, because again, we're working with student labor, and they're helping us out with this. And anybody in the construction side can tell you, especially in the state of Kansas right now, the majority of the work is not new builds, it's renovations, right? And so this gives those students a real hands-on opportunity in the Goodland community and an ability to make a difference in downtown. So that's kind of what we're looking at, and hopefully we can see the support of the city and partnering with us to make that happen. Any questions for me?
Any questions for me? I'm sorry, I forgot to mention. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that. Little finishing touch. This would be a concept. This is one we found online that we really like. This would be outside of the arches, of course, because there are no arches in there. But this would give you somewhat of an idea of what we're looking at as far as the space, where you can see the hardwood floors and their exposed brick, and then, of course, it'd be a little different than the ceilings you're looking at first. But again, really looking at, and I like to throw this in. I've had some conversations around this, where I would like to encourage you to think a little outside the box. The college is here, and we've been here since 1964, and God willing, we'll be here for decades and decades and decades from now. I want you to keep in mind, we're not a taxing entity, so we don't have a mill levy that we charge against the community members in Goodland or Sherman County. This is a project that we would look to tackle both on an institutional level as well as working with nonprofit foundations to fundraise for this, and individuals who would want to contribute to the project. This, for us, presents a really unique potential for us to do something really cool, and really something that I think would be unique for the community and unique for our students.
And at the same time, I will indicate, I'll throw in here as well, that, the college plays a pretty significant role in the economic impact of the Goodland community. Annually, it's about a $16 million economic impact, with no tax dollars gone from the community back. And so this for us is a way for us to continue the good work that we do and being a part of the broader Goodland community.
So you would be looking at utilizing all three levels then, right?
Yeah, we don't know what we would do with that basement. It's got a little bit of a low ceiling to it down there. It's a little creepy, quite frankly. But certainly it's got good potential for storage space. So, for example, if this were to be similar to what you're seeing here on the screen where you've got event space, that can be, and we're not looking at constructing a whole lot of walls in there, very open floor concept, and really restoring the building back to its original beauty is really what we're looking for. But ability to store some things down in the basement. Quite frankly, working with our endowment association, if we house them there, freeing up one of our storage closets, which sits right next to my office, certainly wouldn't hurt either. So move some endowment stuff over there, and provides really a good space. In the spring semester, when we go and collect all those wonderfully donated items from community members, for a place for us to store those until the endowment option hits. So yeah, those would be some concepts. And then like I said, for the upstairs, we talked about opening that up and looking for nonprofit partners that would want to house there.
I do have one question.
Please.
We've had a discussion
Yes.
about this personally. Like I said, I would love to see the college be able to do this with this building. On that note, if, let's say, a separate private contractor were to address the city and say that they would like to say that it gives them the building because they had a plan that they would like to do to restore the building, do you think that would be all fairness to go with a private contractor if they wanted to do the same thing as a college?
I guess I would put that back on the commission to say whatever you think is the best thing for the building and for the community. And I mean that quite sincerely. I'm not trying to play hardball with you. The reality at the end of the day, as you know, is your roles are to do what you think is best for the community. And so I wouldn't fault you for that. It's a building that I would say, I've had a couple questions to say, well, if it went up on the market, would the college bid on it? Would we try to buy it? And I will tell you, quite frankly, the answer is no. Because if we have to dig ourselves in a hole even further, I'd rather do it in a building that has a little less digging out to do. So, quite frankly. But I do appreciate the question. Good question.
JD, any questions?
I had to go back and do a little research. I asked Andrew to help out a little bit. So this project has gone over several commissions. And so when the roof was done, it was about 30,000, 32 plus, and that was a prior commission before I came on. We had an opportunity to finally, quite frankly, get control of it and buy it for 8,000 when I came on. And so I'm like, heck yeah, we're already in it for 32. Might as well own it for 8 more. And I have absolutely no problem with the college getting it. I mean, it seems a little weird. This is a thank you and a give back for all that you bring to the community as a gift back. But I think, in reality, on a philosophical, political basis, do I think government should be basically buying properties and doing this? Well, not necessarily, no. But in small towns and situations like this, you gotta change your philosophy a little bit. What's like best for the town and best for the community, best for Main Street. And I think by far, this is, a good opportunity for you all. And to say that building downtown and to make something good of it. And so I have absolutely no problem with handing it over to them.
Any further thoughts there? JJ?
Well, what Ben said is true. They would probably do a really good job with it. But looking out for the taxpayers' dollars, I think it should be put up for sale for a month or 2 months to just see if there's any activity and make it for Goodland only to buy it. So it is nobody out of town coming in and buying the building. And then if there's no activity there, go ahead and give it to the VOTEC. But I think that is right, looking out for the dollars that the city has spent, which is taxpayer money. That needs to be done in respect for our taxpayers.
So it's more of an Andrew question, I guess. So with the city buying the property, was that done because that somehow gets rid of the abatement from the roof on the taxes?
I think a number of factors came into play when we originally purchased that building. We originally purchased it because this building was in this perpetual cycle of, it was deteriorated. It was sold on eBay to a private contractor. The private contractor gets in there and says, oh my gosh, there's no way I can get a return on this investment. There's no way I can make my money out of this. I'm gonna sell it on eBay. Another person bought it. They come in and say, oh my gosh, there's no, you know, you look at those pictures, and I think it's indicative that the government sometimes needs to step in when the private sector has failed. And this is an indicator where the private sector has not. I mean, this building, Ben's exactly right, it would be losing this building if we continue this process. So part of it was stepping in, trying to break that cycle, and then the other part is, as Commissioner Brumbaugh alluded to, that the city had already kind of invested in the roof, and so by us purchasing that building gives us the autonomy to decide what is done with that building, right? So part of it is the city invested money into it. For a little bit more investment, we have the ability now to control what is to be done with that building. Again, seeing at the time where we didn't feel like there were exactly people beating down the door to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at least to fix up a downtown building, that's where we decided that, again, we have to think outside the box here a little bit. We have to develop, you know, we're gonna have to figure out an entity that's maybe not going into this thinking, how am I going to make money on this project, because that model has failed. That's when the tech came into, Northwest Tech came into play, and I think it's a really good plan. I think it's not only a great economic driver for all the reasons Ben alluded to, but I also think this is one of those projects that puts Northwest Tech and the city of Goodland on the map. This is the kind of project they put on the front page of magazines that say, look at how Goodland and Northwest Tech came together and saved a downtown. I mean, that has front page story written all over it. We see it all, you know, that kind of feel good, intuitive story. So the city of Goodland not only has the ability to kind of save this building, put it into good use, but it also has the ability to craft a story that would really ultimately be a very good PR and marketing thing for this community, in my opinion. But sorry, I went off on a tangent there. But those were kind of the considerations at the time for why we would step in and make that purchase.
So what I would say is simply that, you know, for giving it some profound and deep thought and looking at all the different angles that we've been dealing with, and as JD has alluded to, you know, we've had several commissions that have worked on this particular project. First of all, I think that, you know, the temperament changes with new commissions when we're not totally, you know, educated in the history of some of the things that have taken place. And, you know, this is one opportunity that we have to deepen the foundation of our relationship publicly with the college. You know, the college is a great economic factor that pours in, as you've alluded to, almost $16 million. And the only things that you have to rely on is student count and what the state facilitates for you. But let's just look at the numbers. You know, if this gentleman spends, you know, a minimum of $1,500 on electricity, you know, that's about $18,000 a year. You multiply that by 5 years, that's over $100,000. So have we really given the money and the building away? And that's not to say the maybe projected new jobs that might be precipitated by constructing all this dream that you have. So one of the things that I feel is that anytime an opportunity comes to enhance and visualize future growth to our community, has to be done with the height of diplomacy. That there are times that it comes that we must give a little in order to receive a lot. And this is precisely what I see with this particular project. I don't think that we're giving anything away. I think that for years to come, we put this building into operation, we would have created a venue for huge economic gains to further address the things that this municipality has to deal with and contend with in future years. So, you know, I'm on the side that I believe it's on the formal action. So I'm going to call for a vote and let the rest.
So what you're saying, John, is that even a new owner, other than the VOTEC, you wouldn't get electrical service and all that other money too?
No, that's
Yeah, that's what you just said.
yeah, well,
That's what
your,
you just said.
That's your interpretation.
That's what you just said.
No,
Yes.
that's not what I said.
Yes, you
That's
did.
what you're reading into the situation.
Because you said you would get $1,500 a month. You didn't say that the other business would get that too. If somebody else bought the building, you would still get that same amount of money in return.
But one
And
of the
utilities.
one of the elements that you have to consider and look at, Mr. Howard, is the fact that you have a particular entity here that's got all of the components and factors in place to begin to work. Now, you're entitled to your own opinion, and I'm not going to debate with you. You know, you're entitled to do that. I think that it would be better served by facilitating, you know, an agreement with him and say, hey, you know, he's got to do something with that building.
Well, I know it does, but you don't say that the new owner, if somebody else came in and paid us
No, I'm not.
$10,000 for the building, that they wouldn't have something to do with it too. That they would have to do it.
I
And
understand.
they'll be revenue and stuff in.
I understand your
You know.
position, but how quickly are they going to facilitate the infrastructure to get it in a point? Look at the building where it's at.
He said 3 to 5 years, and it'd probably take 3 to 5 years for somebody else to do that.
And so,
So you gotta give the same amount of time frame to everybody.
well, you know.
Not that, I went to VOTEC, John. I spent 2 years there,
I
okay?
understand.
The VOTEC is a good school. And what Ben has said tonight is all great. I like the enthusiasm there. But I'm looking out for the city's taxpayers' dollars. And we spent $43,000 on this building already. That's taxpayer money. And now you're wanting to give it away. Why not put it up for sale for an amount of 30 days and see if there is some interest in it locally? Don't put it out otherwise, put it locally to see if there is somebody that is local that really wants to rehabilitate a building.
Well, I think, you know, we've got it on the option. Like I said, we'll put it on the motion. You've had your say-so, Mr. Howard. And so I'll entertain a motion to move with the situation if it's voted in. It's democracy. You know, that's, you know, things.
I've said my piece.
Exactly. And so the commission has the call on the table. If you want to make a motion, you make a motion. And if it's not seconded, then, you know, it's tabled until we find a way to resolve the issue.
I'll move that we transfer the ownership of the building at 1008 Main to the Northeast Tech for the sale price of $1.
Have a motion on the floor. You have a second? I'm going to second that motion. And so that it just goes formally on the record, those who are in favor of progressing the community. So if there's not any further discussion, Mayor, you go.
Thompson,
It hurts, but no.
Howard,
No.
Ferris, Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ben.
You bet.
So we move on to item.
So can I put a motion on the floor?
Sure.
That we put it out for bids for 30 days locally? And if there's no interest in the building, go ahead and donate it to the VOTEC for $1.
Do you want to put a number on it?
Doesn't have to be a number. Somebody could come in and offer 5,000 with restrictions that they've got 3 to 5 years to have it operational.
Okay. I like the way you're thinking, I like the way you're going, but I feel like maybe a couple weeks worth of thought should go into exactly what
We want.
that needs to be maybe brought up next meeting. As for how we would want to be listed and under what terms.
So what you're saying is you want to, would you repeat that, sorry?
He just wants to take.
I'm just saying maybe we should, instead of going right into a motion where we're not real sure what we're wanting.
Okay,
we table the
I
discussion
rescind my motion
for next meeting.
next meeting.
Think about it.
Think about it.
So everybody's in unanimous agreement with that. Jamie?
Yeah, I just didn't know what protocol was as far as Commissioner Sayers being here or not. I call on, trying to call again, he says there's a flag, how that works. I know we called various times.
Any idea on that?
I didn't know if arrangements were made to.
But we've tried.
Yeah.
We've tried, so.
But yeah, I think Mr. Howard is right. We tried a couple of times. And,
Commissioner Ferris could participate in the meeting at any time, but at this point, I guess it depends on the commission. If you want to try him again, how come, someone who hasn't, I guess, participated in the presentation, in the discussion up to this point, but.
Yeah.
so you say to call him?
No, I just didn't know how we've done that in the past at times when we've had to call to get a vote. So I didn't know if he was scheduled to be and we just haven't reached him, if that's why you're calling him. It doesn't matter. We can put it off. I just didn't know when
How do you
to
feel
do
about
that and when we don't.
And we might not get no offers on the building, but I think it's right to put it out there for the people of Goodland. And if we don't, sell it to the VOTEC for the $1.
And it's like kind of, they were like,
We tried.
Commissioner Ferris wasn't involved with the discussion with the whole thing, and he may not have all the proper information to make a proper vote one way or the other at this point.
He was on the $30,000 vote on the roof, so he's had history with it to that point. I think as far as the community involvement and having opportunities to purchase it, we've seen what that has done. And so that's why I went with the known entity, and I think it's good for our community, so we can take it from wherever.
Well, we can bring it back up to vote at the next, meeting again, give us some thoughts. I mean, it's,
Should we bring it back up for discussion next meeting? I mean, the same motion could be made next meeting.
Yeah, that's No, it's perfect, yeah. I didn't know if you're saying that I'm hearing the presentation, if you want him to vote on it, you know, do this here,
Yeah, but I just feel like he's kind of missed out on the whole thing we had.
Yeah, no, I didn't know if that's what you were saying.
That's what I was getting at, yeah, I don't know that.
So
He wouldn't be able to make it.
You want to vote next time, or?
sure.
Well, we'll just bring the
Bring it
whole
back
thing
up.
back up for discussion next meeting.
That's fine.
All right. Okay. Thanks again for that presentation, Dave.
You bet. Appreciate it. Thank you,
And
guys.
move on to item number B, IFB 2020-05 demolition of unpaid structure at 1521 Kansas Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We did have a bid opening on October 1st for the demolition of 1521 Kansas. We received 2 bids, one from B&K Pumping for $4,825, one from Goody for the amount of $6,500. Again, we've got $16,955 in that line item, so we do have the funding capacity to award this bid, and I do recommend award to the low bidder, B&K Pumping.
So you've heard the proposal. I will entertain a motion to accept the demolition amount to be in K $48.25.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Howard, second.
I'll second.
And second by Commissioner Brombaugh. Any questions? Mary, read the roll.
Brumbault.
Yes.
Howard.
Yes.
Harris. Thompson.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Move on to item number C, IFP 2020-06, renewal of dead deceased trees. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. We did have a bid opening for IFB 2020-06 again on October 1st. There were 4 trees solicited in this bid for abatement of nuisance. These were, again, dead trees in our community where we put information out in the newsletter and solicited, hey, if you're aware of dead or diseased trees that need to be abated, please let us know. A lot of times it's a complaint-driven process, relating to tree issues. Obviously, tree removal is a very expensive item, as you can see from the bids that were received. So typically, we do tree abatement at the end of the year, kind of around this time period after we've awarded unfit structure bids to see really what funding we have left in the line item. So these were all trees that were identified and recommended for removal. So we did have a bid opening on the 1st. 2 bids were received. One from Earthscapes Unlimited for $5,355, and one from Cynthia Welsh for $9,500. And Earthscapes Unlimited is out of Burlington, so they're not a local bidder, but the local bidder was well outside of 5% difference. So we do recommend award to the low bidder on this, Earthscapes Unlimited.
And the low bidder complies with all of the insurance provisions and...
Yes, the Earthscapes is licensed as an arborist in the city of Goodland, and they do have to provide their insurance compensation information.
So I have a motion, not a motion, but the bids for the tree removals, I entertain a motion for the low bidder as recommended by the city.
I'll move.
Have a motion by Commissioner Thompson, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second by Commissioner Howard. Any questions or concerns? Mary, read the roll.
Thompson.
Yes.
Harris. Howard.
Yes.
Brumbault.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Move on to item D, design contract for reconstruction of Airport Runway 523. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have Darren Neufeld here with EDH Engineering. This is for the design engineering of our airport runway 523 reconstruction project. I would defer to Darren. Welcome to the podium.
Good evening. Yes, as Andrew has said, this is a project that's been a little while in the making, but it's the next one that the FAA has given us the chance to go ahead and do. So it's not only to reconstruct 523, but this will include the lengthening by 500 feet of 523. So that'll make us so we have a 4,000-foot runway on the crosswind. So it'll also eliminate basically the last of the asphalt out of the airport, and we'll be able to go to almost all concrete. The last little piece that will be asphalt, we actually applied for we got phase 1 of that last year, and that's taxiway B. And we applied for the second phase of that with KDOT Aviation just last week. So hopefully that's favorable. So I'm hoping I can stand here in a year and say we're now asphalt free, which has been our problem at the pavements at the airport. So this project, like I said, this is design only contract. This is not the construction engineering, which the FAA recommended we break that into 2 different contracts. So this covers the geotechnical exploration is one of the items that the FAA was very insistent upon, and we do. That's a substantial chunk of this contract. We'll be paying a contract sub-consultant to come out like Terracon or GSI, one of those, to come out and do borings. We have to do 20 borings along the center line of the existing runway and the extension area so that the FAA will sign off on our pavement design, both the base and the pavement design. So it's a requirement that drives the price up a little bit. The other thing, we are not under a long timeline with this one, but there are some milestones that we have to hit, and the FAA has come back and said that they would like to have this thing bid out and have a contractor selected by May 1st. So, you know, we're, 7 months from that deadline. So we needed to get this rolling to stay on their timeframes. But they've also mentioned that another requirement that's come up in recent times with airports is when we did the master plan update, there was an AGIS. It's the GIS program that's for airports across the nation, and it's run by the FAA, or the FAA office. Part of that master plan process was to get that data input into that system. So all of the existing facilities are in that system, but anytime now we make a change to a facility, i.e. this lengthening of this runway, we have to redo that part of the AGIS system. So that extension requires some additional computer work back up to the FAA to get that, and also that then drives the new approaches for that runway. So we will lose the approach to that end of the crosswind runway once we start construction, because that end of the runway will no longer be that end of the runway. We have to do the AGIS to then get the new approach, the aeronautical approach into that end. So it's just all part of the process, and because there's so many of these processes, we needed to get this contract in place soon so we could get the surveyors out and get them started to still meet the May deadline that we're going to be at to get to turn in for the grant money. So the FAA has set aside this money for this construction, and it is sitting there earmarked for Goodland. So as long as we hit the May deadline, the money is there. The only other thing you might hear as time goes along is we had a meeting on, Andrew, do you remember how many were on that meeting from the FAA side? There must have been 20 scattered all over the United States. The FAA owns part of the nav aids on the airport. And so they own them, they maintain them. The localizer, the Mauser, the lights as you're coming in, the glide slope on the main runway. But they also own the PAPIs, which are the 4 little boxes that set off to the side of the runway that help pilots determine whether they're too low or too high. They own those on this crosswind runway. Well, so the Kansas City FAA folks didn't allow us to start working with what they call their tech ops until this project was certified to go. So we had this meeting, telecon, and the tech op folks in Washington, D.C. told the FAA folks in Kansas City, oh, by the way, we can't get to your review until October of 2021. Well, we have to have it bid out in May of 2021. So there's already an internal headbutting between 2 different departments within the FAA. So the Kansas City folks said, no, there's no way we can wait on that. We're going to go and do it. So the movement of the one set of PAPIs, which is the far end PAPI, since we're going to extend that way, that is going to be kind of a tag along. If we get it with this project, we get it. If we don't, the FAA said, the Kansas City folks said, they'll figure out how to make it follow on and come on the tail end somehow. They said they're not in favor of jeopardizing the $3+ million to do the pavements over those PAPI moves. So that's the first time we've really had the Kansas City FAA really go to bat and fight. I mean, they always do, but this time internally they said, no, different part of the FAA, we can't wait that long. We're not waiting on you. We're going to go. So you might hear that over time that, oh, we're going to lose the PAPIs. Well, they just might not be included in this project. We will get them back. They just might not be part of this construction package. We're designing them to be, but until the tech ops reviews it and gives the blessing, they're not going to put their money in to do it. And since they're an FAA-owned facility, we can't go do it. We can't even shut them off and turn them on legally. That has to be their guys. So
It's a 90-10 project, right?
this is 90-10, right? So even this contract is part of the 90-10.
Yeah, so that's a good deal for us. 500 feet extension, that will allow bigger planes to land, right?
What it will do is it definitely will allow the aircraft that already utilize the main runway on a routine basis the, I won't say latitude, the comfort of being able to use the crosswind runway. I mean, they can still use it now. The only difference right now is there is a weight restriction on the crosswind because of how bad the pavement is. But as far as the length, most of the aircraft that utilize the main runway could, if they had to, use the crosswind. It does not get utilized like it will after we do the Lincoln.
Any questions for Darren? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept the signed contract for reconstruction of the ABH on Airport Runway 523 in the amount of $84,500.
I'll move.
Have a motion by Commissioner Thompson, do I have a second?
I would like to add, could we add on to their contingent upon FAA review and approval to the end of the motion, please? We always have to add that because they always come back with something saying, hey, we need to change this little wording right over here, and that way I don't have to come back to you to get a whole approval again if it's just changes some text.
I move contingent on FAA approval.
Thank you.
Do I have a second?
The board's all good with this?
Yes.
Yeah, second.
Okay. All right, any further, have a motion, have a second, any further questions? Mary, read through.
Brumbaugh,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Bears, Howard,
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren. Item number 6, discussion neighborhood revitalization plan. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. When we had a joint meeting in here a couple months back, Rochelle Stanley from the Sherman County Appraiser kind of reminded us that our neighborhood revitalization plan is set to expire at the end of this year, and she was proposing some amendments to that plan. Rochelle is the primary person who administers the plan, the county appraiser that goes through her office. So she's pretty familiar with that plan. Her recommended changes are included in your agenda packet. There is a plan that is kind of marked up with red language for new language added, strike-throughs for language that was removed. I think most of it is pretty logical, straightforward. A lot of it's just, changing Part 3 to Part C and adding a few more clarifying words. A few substantive changes are in there. I would say one of them is the kind of grace period. That is something that the entities discussed back and forth a few times in years past with regard to NRP. There were some applicants who were in the program who maybe paid their property taxes a day late, and the plan says, well, you pay your property taxes on time or you're kicked out. So those individuals were kicked out of the program, lost their rebates. Then the flip side argument of it is if you are someone who has applied for a property tax rebate, you're in a special program, you're receiving a special benefit, you need to be paying your property taxes on time. Anyone else who pays their property taxes late is penalized. So why do we allow these people to be in the program after that? So one of Rochelle's recommendations was to remove that language so that there would not be a grace period of 10 days, and then it would just be when your property taxes are due, you either pay them or you're not in the program anymore. So other than that, a lot of the other I would classify as non-substantive and technical changes. But it's on just as a discussion, a review item. So I don't know if commissioners have had a chance to kind of look through some of the changes. If you have any questions, you can certainly ask them. Otherwise, the intent would be to bring this back to a future meeting for action. Did say in the agenda packet there, when we have submitted this in the past, we have had to submit it to the Attorney General's office, which has a 90-day review period. Since the interlocal agreement and the plan are currently active, there is language in those plans that they can be extended by mutual consent of the parties. So as long as all the parties say, we can extend, we want to extend the plan with these changes, we're all in agreement with that. It does not need to go back to the AG's office. So basically our timeline would be the end of the year, the end of December, for getting these changes made.
So would all three entities have to meet again and pass it at a formal meeting, or do we, when you bring this back to formal action, is each entity going to go separately, or how?
I think it would depend on where if we're all good with the changes and don't have any additional discussion, the entities can approve the plan themselves. If we feel like, well, we don't agree on this language or that component, then we're going to need to get back together and hash those details out. But the plans themselves do not need to be approved at a joint meeting per se, only if there's discussion that we need to have on it.
So just to refresh memory, when we initially agreed with all of these changes, all three entities were together, right? Yeah, we were together. And so we kind of participated and looked at, and conveyed what we want to change. So I think this is something that all three entities agreed to do.
Yes, so this plan was approved by all three entities.
So then I guess probably what you would need to do is bring it, back for a formal vote, contact the school district and the county, and just convey to them how, unless there's any concerns from other commissioners, on how this thing reads. But I think I went through it pretty thoroughly, and it's just, all the things that was addressed. So, and see if they, are on board with it. Does that work? Any questions? Excellent. Okay, move on to item B, fall cleanup, Andy.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. This was discussed at the previous meeting, requested by Vice Mayor Thompson to be an agenda item for this meeting. Obviously, we, in years past, done spring cleanup. That was postponed due to COVID with the intent to reschedule it to a fall cleanup here. Obviously, we haven't held the fall cleanup so far, and soliciting from the City Commission how you want to proceed. Do you want to schedule a fall cleanup? Do you want to postpone it to another spring cleanup? We did meet with staff, our recent department head meetings. Kind of the overwhelming feedback from our department heads right now is that they feel just like there's a lot on their plate, like there's a lot of work. We've kind of talked about some of the personnel, staffing changes. We've got a lot of new blood in right now that we're trying to get trained up and trying to get kind of work through for the fall. So I think the feeling is right now it's not an ideal time from a workload perspective for our staff to tackle a fall cleanup. And would probably recommend that we postpone it till spring. I would also recommend and probably have the commission look at, we probably need to engage staff as well and have a commission dialogue about looking at ways we can maybe retool the spring cleanup, fall cleanup a little bit. There have been frustrations, I think, about a lot of the things that get put out at the curb is just garbage that could have gone in someone's dumpster. So there's people just basically hauling their trash to the curb. When it started as fall cleanup, obviously several years prior to my time, I think the intention at that time was to kind of have a coordinated effort to go through the alleyways and clean up the alleyways around town. And it kind of got away from that and got more towards, we have people kind of hoarding things and waiting to bring it up to the curb, and there's a few weeks there where it's really an unsightly thing around town. And it's obviously a good service, but it is also very kind of time and labor intensive. Basically, the whole city staff turns into trash people the whole week, and we're going around. So maybe if there's ways, I looked at some other communities that they've kind of shifted to like a bulky item day where people, you got some couches or things like that, limit it to 2 or 3 items, go ahead and, we'll kind of help remove those things, but again, not have the garbage bags. We've had people basically tear down entire trailers and just push it to the curb and say, city, it's your problem right now, you know, so there's some things like that that I think we could probably have a good discussion on. How do we help the community? How do we provide a good service, but also not have that come back to us? As an alternative, kind of what was recommended by staff, that I think would be a good recommendation, is that we go with the county, we work with the county and just have them open up the landfill for a week, and just, you know, if people they're trying to avoid landfill fees or something like that, have an open week of no fees where people can just take that to the landfill. So that way we're still helping them somehow, but it's not maybe the event that it has been.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I think that all sounds great.
All right. Okay, we move on to item 7, report, city manager. Andrew?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a few items for me this evening. An update on the items Vice Mayor Thompson asked about was following up on the sewer smell. So talked with Neil, talked with some of our sewer employees, and basically think that it's kind of two things. That if there's a particularly odorous smell this year, which again it's a sewer plant, some level of smell will be inevitable unless we plant a rose garden out there. But I think they felt that we have had a particularly wet year this year, and that in some ways has contributed to, when you have all that additional rainfall, additional water getting into the system, that does, without getting too technical, reactivate some of the things you have going on in the sewer plant, some of the bacteria and things, and so it's less of a smell when it is kind of settled, it's just doing its natural thing. Some of that rainwater can disrupt it and create a little bit of a smell. So part of that is natural, in that we just had a lot of rainfall this year, and that's made it a little bit worse than it typically is. One of them has just been, it's kind of been a staffing issue. We've only got 2 people out at the sewer plant, and one of them was on kind of extended FMLA leave for several weeks. When you have that, we only have 2 employees that run the sewer plant. When one of them is out of commission, out of service, that other person's full-time job is keeping on top of the sewer plant, whereas when there's 2 of them, you know, they're doing some of those things, getting rid of the sludge, getting rid of some of those, again, kind of more odorous wastewaters and things like that. So just not having the ability to do that, because when you have, again, someone out of commission for a long time, you're not getting rid of that sludge as frequently. So we're still kind of battling through that now, but I think that's the other contributing factors. We just don't have the people to be disposing of that sludge as frequently. So sewer talk's kind of weird. Do you have any questions on that explanation? I hope I can get to that.
So doesn't seem like there's anything misfunctioning out there.
No, and obviously we go through routine tests and everything out there, so if there were some issue with the treatment process, we would have caught it at that stage. So it's just what are the other factors, and I think it's a combination of those 2. Okay, Mary and I have had a conversation with KMEA, and they are going to do an electric rate study and a water rate study for us. They're going to do it at no cost, so that's nice. Obviously, it is going to be kind of a timely process. They've asked for a lot of documentation that we're working on giving to them. You know, for examples, they want 10 years of kind of utility usage and rates and things like that. So we're going into the final storage on this one, but there won't be a charge to the city. We're starting to get them that documentation. They think they would have something back to us in about 3 months on that, so that's kind of the timeline to give us a better understanding. Obviously, we were previously focused on electric, but they can do electric and water for us, so I think we're gonna, for that great low rate, I think we'll take advantage of it. The tennis courts at Stever Park right now are in the process of getting resurfaced. We should have that process finished up sometime this week. That was funded through a combination of the Dane Hansen Foundation grant that we received from them and USD 352 to contribute $5,000 as well, since the primary reason that we're resurfacing those tennis courts kind of with the tennis program brought back to the school district. So our park and street crews are working on a connection at the staying in Stever Park, kind of additional topside trail pathway there. We did get a grant through the Sherman County Community Foundation to connect this piece of sidewalk that was basically 4-foot sidewalk, and we're extending that to 8 foot so that the topside trail loop is kind of interconnected. That's been one of the primary comments we've received since installing the new trail. I mean, obviously the feedback's been overwhelmingly positive, but if there is a negative, people say, "Oh, I didn't realize how narrow a 4-foot sidewalk is until I'm walking on 8 foot." So,
And who'd the money come from?
the Sherman County Community Foundation, and so we're matching that with the topside trail funds as well. So that project is wrapping up here too. We did receive our Spark funding. I did misspeak at the last meeting. I think I said about $30,000. We did actually receive $54,000 in Spark funding. I forgot to mention was the work from home capacity items. So we're getting several laptops, work from home software, some of those things, so that if there was another big COVID flare up to where people were getting quarantined or having to work from home, that we would be able to deploy a series of laptops so people could still get their work done from a non-office setting. We have installed the first niche at the ossuarium out at the Midland Cemetery, so I think that's something our cemetery caretaker and cemetery board has really been anticipating, and hopefully drives kind of additional niche sales out there, more people see what that space is used for, and I think some people think it's a monument, don't quite know what to do with it, as they say, it's a place for to store ashes and things like that. So it looks really good. Take a lovely stroll through the cemetery if you're next convenient. But Mayor, that would conclude my report. Let's stand for any questions from commissioners at this time.
Any questions for me?
No,
Before we go on to item B, city clerk report, ma'am.
Well, my first item is on behalf of the city staff, I would like to offer condolences to the families of Suzanne McClure, Rich Simon, and Joyce Sanderson. I don't think some people realize that these are members of our team that have impacted our employees, and would like people to know that we keep them in our thoughts and prayers. So I wanted to publicly say that. In the office, I've been working on updating the KDOT random testing. There's new federal law that we have to work with the clearinghouse, since I've been working with Compliance One to get that in compliance. We are catching up with scanning documents. Crystal's been working with the families of the employees that have passed on for their benefits, their capers and other benefits. And along with that, she's working with the other departments on the advertising and the interviews and the new employee information that's required. And also the information that's required for employees that leave the city. We are required to give them certain information. And she's been working with that. The electric crews have completed a lot of meter change-outs, and so we're trying to get that information in and verifying all that information in the billing system, and there have been quite a few of those, and it all takes time. We're starting to process the next transportation grant, and so I have a couple of employees that are attending a webinar on that. I have a new employee at the front desk that we continue to train, and also have one that transitioned and continuing to train her. Working with Darren on FAA grants and year-end report filing. Their deadline, or their year-end is at the end of October, so I'm required to, or I'm sorry, September. So I'm required to file the grant information this month. As Andrew said, we're working on the rate study stuff. We continue to maintain day-to-day operations. Sometimes it gets kind of radical down there because we're short help or whatever, but we're trying to maintain. And then, I don't know if I can get through this one, but on behalf of city staff, I would like to say that we appreciate everything Andrew has done and we wish him the best of luck. We really have appreciated your support and your hard work, especially through COVID and through this tough time that we've had to encounter this year. And I'm sorry I'm very emotional, but we really have appreciated what you've done for the city and the community.
Don't make me cry.
That's why I was picking up my report.
Any questions for Mary?
Staying busy, thank you.
Right, we'll start off with City Commissioners report. KJ?
I don't really have too much. I see the alley over by the GAC's almost complete, or pretty well complete, and it looks good. And the sidewalk over at the Stever Park looks really good. And I appreciate all that the city employees are doing. If they're out working outside or in the office, I appreciate it all. And I appreciate you, Andrew, for what you've done for the city, and good luck in your endeavors.
I'm just gonna kind of piggyback on what those two just said.
I just appreciate all the information you get back to me in my long emails sometimes, and all the asks that I've sent your way, and you always respond kindly, and I just wish you all the best. Go Big Red.
I think we've all learned to appreciate Andrew, as Mary has said. There's, always times of differences, but we agree to disagree. We become professionals. We leave things at the table when we leave. I agree wholeheartedly with what Mary said about the ones who have departed, from our presence. They are missed, and they played a great role in contribution to the mechanics of everyday operations. I appreciate what the employees are doing. It's never easy to be on this side of the scope where we have to do a balancing act for everyone that's involved, as the representative from U.S. side, alluded to. So, Andrew, I'd like to appreciate, and extend my gratitude for the contribution you make to our community. I think our overall summary, when we do your evaluation, alluded to some of the things that you've accomplished. So you've been patted on the back, before. Who knows? You're going to be around, right? So, any further action on the meter situation up there at the building where Dollar General is? Well, of course, it's not here. Has anybody taken a look at or talked to the owner about putting a meter in there?
I'd like to check with Dustin on that and follow up with you.
I talked with Michael Borgman, on the board, and he said I went down and he just kind of walked around and he kind of showed me how everything is, and he was going to get in contact. He said he was going to get in contact with the owner of the building and talk with him about what needed to be done, and he was going to get back with me and that conversation. station, yeah, and it's not about so I don't know if he stopped us in there or not.
Okay. Might be something for Dustin to follow. Any further activity on the pickleball deals? I've had some calls on those things.
Yes, so Dustin, we have that one in the works. Dustin prioritized the skate park lights over there because we already had
Sure.
poles and light fixtures, so
Good.
we are working on them.
She was working with Danny up here on the parkway.
Yeah, they've already called in the locates and they're getting ready to start just any day, so.
I don't know if Dustin and Danny have seen each other.
Well, Danny seems
Danny's
to
been
know
on the
what's
concrete
going on.
crew lately.
All right, that's all, that's all that I have. Thank you, Danny. At this moment, I'm going to make a motion to recess into executive session of the authority of KSA 75-43-19B1 for matters relating to non-elected personnel for a period of 15 minutes, and the time is 7:02. I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? All those in favor, side, and I request only the commission.
Aye.
Time is 7:03. We're off.
Yeah. Hit your button.
Is there any congratulations on your baby?
Yours is off, John.
All right.
There you go. Thank you.
I call this meeting back to order. And I'm going to make a motion to recess into executive session under the authority of KSA 75-4319B1 for matters related to non-elected personnel, and I would request the 5 commissioners and Andrew for 5 minutes. And the time is 7:19, so I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Call this meeting back to order at 7:25. If there is not any other business to be conducted by the commission, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Have a motion, a second? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys. Give